Hello and welcome to Imperial Advisor episode 6. We have with us Justin, Baz, and Owen. No Andy this week. So we've sort of decided to do episode this week rather than the usual sort of 2 week schedule to sort of try and get back on track with the sort of FFG's launch schedule, so that we're sort of doing our show the week after they've done the big card release, and then we can do our tabletop simulator sort of a week and a half from now. So that kind of just works better for us. It works better for some of the schedules that people have of lives, and hopefully works better for audience. Plan for this week, we're going to look at Dragon and talk a little bit about our experiences playing a game of Dragon versus Crane, and a few other bits and pieces that just to chat as we go along. So, first up, we're going to look at Dragon Conflict cards. And so we've seen a couple, like Indomitable Will and Miramoto's Fury we talked about last week, and a couple of others that have been seen previously. So I'll just do, again, like we did last time, I'll do kind of run through of the cards that we've seen, and then maybe Baz, you can give us a bit of a sort of overview of what you think are the standout cards. So, Kitsuki's Method, a attachment for +2 politics, which are fairly rare, it seems. Then, Let Go, not to be confused with any Disney songs. Attachment discard thing. Yeah, people are hearing some stuff. Boo. Mantra of Fire, a monk event action. Tattooed Wanderer, a monk character. If I do this, okay, I'm gonna mute you guys while I'm talking and see if that helps. I think it should do. So a monk tattooed wanderer. Oh, it's not. It's still doing it. That's weird. Okay, so monk thing, monk character that can be attached. Tagashi Kazue, another conflict deck character. And then finally, Way of the Dragon, another attachment that is kind of obviously a signature card. So Baz, what are your sort of standard cards?
Well, we've already talked about Miramoto's Fury, which I think is incredibly strong. For one fate being able to essentially save one of your provinces and interfere with the flow of battle is pretty amazing. Similarly, I think Let Go is really, really good. The 0 cost to destroy an attachment, any attachment. So the obvious use is to take out your opponent's weapon, or anything that they've dropped. But the flip side of it is you can also free up offensive attachments like Cloud Mind, and I think that's really good. I'm expecting Cloud Mind to be around there a lot. We're not yet sure how many attachments we're going to see for everybody else, so you're probably going to see the fine katanas and cards like that. It is a 0 cost. The best case scenario for Let Go is where you're actually taking out a card that was a couple of fate investment for them. So I think, to me, those are definitely some of the standouts. For splashing, interestingly, all the cards that we've seen so far have 2 influence. Every last one of them. Now, I believe we're still missing 1 card. We'll have to see what that is, but it looks like you can pick any 5 of the dragon cards that you want. Obviously, you're not going to get Way of the Dragon. Way of the Dragon is one of the big ones. For a 2 cost attachment that gives +1/+1, it's actually not terrible just on that alone, because there are a lot of cards that key off attachments in the dragon set. So the first one that comes to mind obviously is a Stronghold. As soon as you get this down, you can bow to Stronghold to get an extra +1/+1. So that increases the value of any attachment at all. Also, this works with the Nitin Adept. Then we can actually have a look at what the actual ability is. You may trigger each of the attached characters' triggered abilities an additional time each round for a specified period. So if you drop it on the Nitin Master, or the Nitin Adept, as an example, you are now able to bow 2 attachments attached to that character. rather than just a 1. And because the Way of Dragon is an extra attachment, it's giving that utility immediately. For the test games that we've seen, and I think it's fantastic that we're seeing a lot of other groups putting together games, so you can see them on Twitch and you can see them on YouTube if you look for them. Way of the Dragon gets dropped on Yukuni a lot, and Yukuni is taking your opponent's best ability and then using it twice. So for me, those are the real standouts. There's all of the cards are great from what I can see. The Ancestral Daisho and Kitsuki's Meted, they seem a little weak in my opinion compared to their 0 cost equivalents that don't have Ancestral. I'm not a big fan of Ancestral. That said, having those extra cards really rounds things out nicely, and you're never upset to see either of them. I have to admit, I think the Dragon Conflict cards are really, really great.
Justin, any favorites of yours from amongst those?
From amongst them, Way of the Dragon was stunning. Every time it was played, it was great on Yukuni. It was great on the Nidden Adept. It's just a really, really solid card. I mean, 2 Fate is a pretty big investment, but from what we can tell of how the Dragon play, they're kind of an eggs in basket type clan where they want to have very many units, but the units they do have will be of super high quality. And Way of the Dragon just compounds that. I mean, it just, it turns Yukuni into, I mean, he's terrifying enough as it stands, but he's a raging nightmare with Way of the Dragon on him. So that was definitely the standout. I'd echo Baz on the Ancestral. When I saw them initially, I thought they'd be much, much stronger than they are. But are
they just
fine.
A bit slow?
They're good.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Again, the games we're playing aren't lasting much beyond turn 3, turn 4. And I mean, you might get a couple of uses out of one of them in a game. As to whether that's worth the additional 2 Fate that it's effectively costing you for attaching it twice is debatable. Seriously debatable. Of the 2 of them, I think Kitsuki's method is by far the better, simply because there don't seem to be nearly as many boosts for political skill.
Although
that may
doesn't have the weapons trait for your Knitting Masters.
This is true. So, but yeah, so it's hard to tell. But anyway, they weren't all that impressive. Let Go is ludicrous. It's so good. I mean, every deck will be playing attachments, and it's free destruction. At best, you're messing with. At the very worst, you're messing with someone's plan. And at the very best, you're messing with someone's plan and costing them a fate or 2. It's superb. I think by far the highest utility card. It'll be like it's just good in almost every situation.
And not hard to find a time to use it. You mean attachments are played all the time?
Yeah, I mean attachments are. Yeah, they're certainly. I mean they're. There might be a couple of decks. I mean, we might see Lion not run nearly as much or nearly as many attachments, instead relying purely on weight of bodies. So there might be a metagame consideration.
That will be a while though. Right now they've got 3 attachments out of their total of 10 cards. So they're going to be running attachments for a while. Yeah. Yeah,
but I mean, as I said, Lion do have a viable alternative and just swarming the board with bodies, as opposed to trying to beef their guys up. But they were like they were all pretty good. They were all pretty good.
And actually, against Crane, it can take out their above questions, and then you can take out whoever was protected by above question.
Although above question is a card that I have not been at all impressed by, because it's I mean, maybe it's great in specific situations, but it's 1 Fate, it's telegraphed. Unless the character that it's on is dominating or going to be dominating the board, then you just send your actions elsewhere, and ignore that. Just let that character do what it's going to do. So that's one of the cards I haven't been all that impressed by. But the dragon, dragon cards are pretty. They were all just fantastic. Mantra of Fire is really interesting because it almost shuts people out of declaring fire challenges or fire conflicts, which is kind of a big deal, actually. Because as we saw in our game, the dragon are very powerful at dominating the board, but they're susceptible to key actions at inopportune moments. Yeah. And Mantra of Fire is a card that discourages at least one of the big setup mechanics in the game, which is the Ring of Fire. Indomitable Will again was very good. So they were just super solid. I thought very impressed by pretty much everything we saw. They were very, very. They just felt well designed and compact and powerful. So. And
Owen, do you see many people picking Dragon as the clan they want to splash on the basis of this?
Yeah, the big thing for Dragon is going to be Let Go. I think nearly every one of the clans has a free or very cheap conflict card event, which is, something you could build nearly your conflict deck around. The Lion has the bow or the straighten action, the reaction straightening after you guys bowed, straighten them.
Yeah, battle.
Yeah, they're like Crane of a counterspell. Yeah, and Let Go is Dragon's thing. Now, initially, some people saw Let Go and thought, well, this is ridiculous. This just gets rid of any attachment. And it absolutely does. But I think the most expensive attachment we've seen costs 3 fate, and that's a dragon attachment. I think the second most expensive we've seen is 1 or 2 clans have had 2. I think the Crab's Tetsubo is 2. And most of the other ones cost 1 or 0. So you'll get fate advantage from playing this, maybe, but it's mostly a positional advantage thing. Now, it's a huge card because it's the only way we've seen to strip away an attachment. So if someone goes in, like 2 military strength guy with a +2 fine katana on him, that person could technically crack a problem. So Let Go will get rid of that. And that's kind of huge. But one of the interesting things with the metagame may be that we don't know in tournaments if you have to declare who you've allied with before the game starts. So a big part of the game would be trying to suss out what the other person is allied with. Because once you know that cuts it down to relatively few cards. There's only going to be a couple of cards who are really like, this is the card I definitely want to go on for another clan for. Let Go is one of them. And I think once you play it, any sort of dragon one, people are like, well, now we got to watch out for Let Go. We can't rely on that attachment staying on the board. So it should be interesting.
Cool. All right, so maybe we'll switch on to Dynasty and look at some of that. So we've got Ascetic Visionary, Ascetic, Tattooed Monk. It won't take attachments. Can spend fate to unclaimed rings. Which is kind of a sort of thing we've seen a little bit of from Dragon, and allows you to ready a character or a character with a monk character or a character with a monk attachment. Sorry, I'm talking really badly because I've got this echo happening and it's sort of like totally throwing me off. We've got Enlightened Warrior, a 2/2 for 3 fate Bushi. Reaction after opponent selects a ring with fate on it, place 1 fate on this character. Seems just strong. I mean, low statted, but free fate just seems quite good to me. Kitsuki Investigator, a 1/3 for 3. While this character is participating in a political conflict, spend 1 fate to an unclaimed ring. Look at your opponent's hand, choose a card and discard it. Mirumoto Raitsugu, a 3/2 for 3. While this character is participating in a conflict, choose a participating character controlled by your opponent and challenge them to a military duel. The loser of the duel has no fate. If the loser has no fate, discard it or lose 1 fate. Nitin Adept, 2 for 2. while his character is participating in a conflict, bow a friendly attachment to bow a character without attachments. And then the Knitting Master at 3/3 for 4. After you attach a weapon to him, you can ready him. And then the Big Daddy Togashi Yukuni 5/5 for 5, who can copy abilities on other characters once per round. Justin, what sort of stands out to you from that sort of cast of characters?
Well, I think the card that impressed me probably the most in the game we had was the Neaton Master. Actually, both the Neaton cards were very, very good. I thought they were both excellent. The Neaton Adept, obviously with the attachments, just allows you to bow attachments and then doing that, bow opposing characters' other attachments. Obviously, you can see why Let Go is even more important for Dragon, because Let Go allows you to set up Neaton Adept's action, and it's such a powerful action. If you strip off, like if you've got a clan champion, you strip off whatever attachment they have and just bow them. Very powerful. The Neaton Master was also, he's very, very expensive, but he could potentially participate in up to 3 conflicts in a turn. You can just send him in on the attack, attach a weapon to him, which will ready him, defend with him, and then attach him to the weapon and attack with him again. So when he was on the board, he was terrifying. But that said, once he's got his weapons down, then he's just a stat stick, effectively. But very, very good all the same. And given the game is so short, he will be impactful in a significant portion of the game. Raitsugu is pretty decent. Like he's what seems to be like the standard 3-cost 3/2 duel. What's the crane? There's the crane character that's the same stats. Forgotten the name. But the Fate Ring effect is
Kakita Kazin.
That's the one.
Kazin, that's it. Yeah, but the Fate Ring effect is very powerful, and kind of that also synergizes with a bunch of other little effects that Dragon have about taking fate from their opponents. So yeah, he was pretty good. Kutsuki Investigator, I think, is possibly the standout card. It's not well statted at all. 3 for a 1/3 is very, very poor, and he's only a courtier, so he's quite restricted in terms of keywords. But the action is the kind of action in a game as cut and thrust as this game is at the moment. An action that allows you to look at an opponent's hand and strip out a key card will just win you a game. So the action does have restrictions, and it has restrictions on restrictions. So it's political conflict only, which means that depending on the context of the game, you may not want to be declaring your political conflict first. So basically, you're using politics here to set up a military attack or something like that. And it's also max 1 per conflict. So even if you have 2 or 3 Kutsuki investigators in the same conflict, you can only use one of the investigators. You can't. You can't just use Investigator 1, Investigator 2, Investigator 3, for example. But the ability is super, super powerful, and could easily just turn a game on its single use. Apart from that, the pretty solid. The Enlightened Warrior is another fate manipulation card. Low stats, but you're kind of you're recycling your fate in a I suppose not a particularly efficient way. But given that your opponent will more than likely be taking the rings that you put fate on just to get fate, because it's such a scarce and powerful resource, this gives you at least some measure of repayment in there. So, but overall, they were just very, very solid, very, very solid, very board control oriented, Yukuni. I suppose we should talk about Yukuni. He's by far, of the 3 clan champions that we've seen and played so far, he is by far the best. Again, he's a board control monster. The other 2 are great for I mean, obviously they're good for winning conflicts, and they reward you for winning conflicts. But Yukuni he completely changes. I mean, the scope and the outlook of the board when he hits it. And the fact that, if you want to bring in some good stuff to try and shut him down, he'll just jujitsu it right back at you. So he was super, really, really impressive, and he's obviously a Bushi Shigenja as well. So he's loaded with keywords.
I actually hadn't noticed he was a Shigenja.
Yeah, he was the original. He was the original Samurai Shigenja, the one and only. Yeah.
It looked like it was a nice team that they could have done something with, but they never did, which was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But interestingly for this, he's not a monk. So there's a bunch of cards like Chaos monks that he cannot use.
Which is kind of funny, given the story that sort of implied the daimyo was a Togashi monk usually, or comes from being a Togashi monk.
Yeah, I think that might just be a mechanical consideration. I mean, when you've got cards like the Ascetic Visionary, who allows you to pay fate to unclaimed rings to straighten to ready monks, then that could very, very quickly get completely out of hand if you've got Yukuni copying an Ascetic Visionary. And then, the Ascetic Visionary straightens Yukuni, then Yukuni straightens Yukuni. It's, then you attach Way of the Dragon to Yukuni, and Yukuni straightens Yukuni again.
And luckily that hypothetical horror scenario is actually achievable by dropping a 1-cost tattooed wanderer onto Yukuni, and then all of the stuff that targets monks targets monk with a monk attachment.
But it's another step. It's another step, and if and if they attach one of their monk attachments, and you let go of that, then it's not too bad. But it's I think it's really a mechanical concern that kind of utility and power on tap would be just a bit too good.
Now I've got this image of Yukuni with a monk in his mouth over like a mountain cliff face, and someone's like, "Let go, Yukuni, let go, bad clan champion, let go."
Yeah, dropping off the edge. Yeah,
I think as I said, the dragon playstyle seems to be very much an eggs and baskets style, where you have a couple of really tooled up individual characters who just Rambo the board. Win challenges, defend. They just do a little bit. They just do everything. And outside that, and the rest of their stuff seems to be support for that. I mean, you've got the swordsmith to go and get stuff. You've got the Kitsuki investigator to hopefully protect your big boys from the really unfortunate actions that can completely derail your entire plan. So
it seems
very good.
a little like the kind of more so maybe than Crane Online, Dragon have a lot of options of ways to play or how they sort of play out their turn that it kind of sort of expands into this sort of like, because in part because of Yukuni and because you sort of built to copy things, you've got a lot more sort of available paths to take on the table at any given time. Do you think that makes Dragon harder to play optimally? Maybe Eoin? Any thoughts on that? Or do you think that premise is wrong?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say that order of operation stuff is a lot more important for Dragon. Like with Lion, realistically, you're looking at one really big, probably military challenge turn, and then you're going to see if you can wrangle a politics one. Whereas with Dragon, I mean, even I was looking, the Neaton Master and the Ascetic Visionary are very similar characters in one way. That they can do sort of the same thing, in that they let you get more value out of a big guy. And I think Ascetic Visionary is better if you're going second, if you're eating the first challenge, because you can defend with somebody else, some other monk. You can then attack with the Ascetic Visionary and get back that monk you defended with by spending a fate to the ring. Whereas that option really isn't there if you're having to go first with him. You can use him to get a guy back for the second attack, if the second attack is going to come. Whereas the Neaton Master is great if you're going first. You're attacking, you go, grand, Neaton Master, go in, smash province, grand, attach weapon, ready, Neaton Master, I'm ready to defend now. So they're sort of they are different and distinct like that. So I think that they both have that. And I think it's telling that those both seem to be the two 4-cost characters. That they are a lot about, okay, what am I doing? How am I going to leverage my one giant guy as opposed to leveraging my horde of lesser guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting the Neat Master as well. That he's obviously going to be pretty big, but just the difference between no ready characters and one ready character is so huge in terms of your ability to counterplay someone's attack or throw a spanner in the works of what their plans are. And particularly if that's, I think a lot of the time he's going to be something like a 5 military skill character, so that's kind of a lot to get over. And so moving on to maybe some of the other characters, the Stronghold, Province, and Holding. So the Holding is the Secluded Temple. Reaction after the conflict phase begins. Each opponent who controls more characters than you must choose a character he controls one or more fate on it and remove one fate from each chosen character. So again, kind of hinting at the eggs in basket approach to the dragon. But seems quite strong in terms of that effect. If you hit multiple guys, it's incredibly good value. And it's going to force your opponent to play around it. Their Province, a 3-strength province, Restoration of Balance. After this province is revealed, your opponent chooses and discards cards from his or her hand until that player has 4 or fewer cards in hand. Which is interesting, obviously potentially very good, but also situational. And then obviously the Stronghold, Mountains Anvil Castle, with the castle keyword, and during conflict bow it to gain political and military strength based on the number of attachments. 1 if you've got 1, or 2 if you've got 2 or more. So Owen, what were your thoughts on that kind of eclectic bunch of cards? But obviously staples.
Yeah. So the Holding's interesting because it tempts you into playing possibly suboptimally against Dragon. I'm not sure if it does or not. I'll have to get a bit more testing in, because that Holding being out in some ways encourages you to just go, well, I guess I'll just buy 3 guys and I'll put no fate in them and we'll smash that province this turn, and then all my guys will go away and we'll try again next turn. And that may be playing into a dragon's hands, going, okay, well, I'm just going to buy 1 guy, put a lot of fate on him, and then save some fate, maybe buy some more guys next turn. So if you see that early, you might if someone had 2 of those, right? If someone had 2 of those, you ain't putting any fate in any guys in your dynasty phase. If you slip those in the provinces, you're looking over there going, well, that sucks. Even one of them is a serious little bit of economic edge. So that may allow a dragon player to have a stronger turn after this one comes out. Also, you're killing that province that turn. It doesn't matter what's happening. That's the one you're going after. You do not want that on the board dictating how you're playing, or putting a fairly serious surcharge on how you choose to invest fate in your guys. Like putting 1 fate in the guys is an investment. Putting 2 is a serious investment. Having to put 3 on to have them around for the same length of time and assuming you kill the province that turn, that's pretty intolerable. So it's good from that point of view. I think it looks potent to me. I don't know if it'll be that potent in play, but it looks potent to me because I think it controls the tempo of the turns they flow into each other quite significantly.
And Def seems like, if you're someone who's just sort of focused on playing their own game and not looking at what your opponent's board and just like concentrating on your own dynasty turn, someone at some point is going to get horribly screwed when they look up across the table and see that they've built the wrong thing, and have to remove some fate from their characters.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Now the so the province, Restoration of Balance. All right, right from the start, people were talking about, well, why don't I just draw like 5 cards on turn 1 and 5 cards on turn 2? And then just play the rest of the game with, on 3 honor or whatever. Well, that's one of the reasons why. I think the clans that can play Dishonor will punish that sort of behavior. And I think the honor running clans will punish that behavior a little bit. And Dragon, which doesn't seem to be much about either playing honor or dishonor, but rather winning the battlefield game, well, this is their punishment for that. The shell game in Dragon is going to be, where is restoration of balance? Is it under the stronghold, or is it hanging out there waiting for you to hit it on your first or second attack? Because if you go in there with, you basically go, okay, I draw 5 cards first turn, I've got 9 cards in hand, maybe I draw a card somewhere else, maybe not, but I attack, and you have to pitch 5 of those cards, you're crying.
Yeah.
You know? You really
That's a
are.
huge
You
cost.
put yourself massively out. So that there will make you more cautious for drawing lots of cards against Dragon, and I wonder if every one of the clans does that by either being able to honor run or being able to dishonor, or generally go, maybe drawing 5 is not the best option here. Maybe I only draw 5 if I really, really, really need to. And I think it's a huge spoiler in the environment when you're playing against Dragon. You look at it and go, well, I don't know where restoration of balance is. I don't know when I'm going to hit it. It's only got 3 problem strength, which reflects the fact that it's got a fairly potent reveal effect. But yeah, I'm interested to see if there's any mechanics that will turn a province face down again. Because once they do, you're never attacking that one again, or at least you know what you're doing when you're attacking it again.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea actually. A province flipping card. Although I mean, obviously the impact is lessened if it's anywhere other than Stronghold. You can potentially avoid it, but you can't avoid that Stronghold. So yeah, and then anything stand out for you that the Stronghold itself? I mean, it's kind of fits the theme. Seems strong.
Yeah, the interesting stuff for me about it is it's 11 honor, which is the same as Crane, which indicates that the honor spread is probably going to be narrower. I don't think we're going to see a clan with like 5 honor or something, or 6 honor.
Yeah.
I think we're not going to go much lower than maybe 9 is the lowest. That range is going to be narrow, which is a good thing because you don't want it to be too big. It creates imbalances.
So just so we're clear, that's Shadowlands at 10 and Scorpion at 9, yeah?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I think the effect in some ways is a little weaker than some of the other strongholds, but it's a lot more flexible.
Yeah.
The Crane one seems pretty solid. It kind of gets you, at worst, it gets you a 2 strength swing when you can use it, but it's not always usable. But Dragons is kind of like this. So long as I fit the criteria, I have two attachments out. This always works, and it works wherever I need it. Whereas Lion is only usable by default in 1 conflict in the turn ever. So you know, it's flexible, and I think the flexibility is it's capped at 2, which is interesting because I assume that's to discourage you from going, well, I've got 5 attachments on 1 guy, and going nuts with it.
I was like sad about that.
So, yeah, super flexible. And usable in pretty much any of the conflicts during the turn, so it's there and always a factor. Yeah.
And one other card for you, Eoin, is the first crab reveal we got from the Facebook stream, Stoic Gunso. 2 costs for 2/1, Bushi. Action during conflict, sacrifice a friendly character. This character gets +3 military until the end of the conflict. So I think we saw that sacrifice on another crab card. So it seems to be a recurring theme.
Yeah. So my initial reaction to that was sacrifice effects. I'm blowing up my guys, but in this game, like there are a lot of sacrifice effects in Game of Thrones, which in a lot of ways is the cousin to L5R. And in those, they're primarily in Stark. There's a bit in Night's Watch as well, I think, but they're primarily in Stark. And they're a serious cost. But in this game, sacrificing a friendly character can actually mean nothing. Like, often, if you're bringing out a bunch of cheap guys, you bought a 1 fake guy, you've made your politics challenge with him already, he's bowed, you have Stoic Gunso there. He had no fate in him. He was going away at the end of turn anyway. Mm-hmm. Being able to sack him to get a bonus right now it just rewards good planning and good order of operations. If you know, right, this guy I'm going to hold back, I'm going to attack with a different guy. In politics, maybe I'll throw a cheap courtier at something. The courtier basically does what they do. Maybe it takes the province, maybe just gets me some information, maybe just wins me the challenge. I don't care. Or maybe they just defended against something. I can sacrifice that person out with a clear conscience. I'm just like, well, that unit was going away anyway. That card was dead. Because it was bad, it was done for the turn, I wasn't going to have a way to straighten it. And being able to go, well, I pop that guy, now this guy is 5 military strength on their own. And that's a hell of a swing back for very little investment.
Yeah. Do you see Crab potentially investing less fate on characters because of that?
I think it will depend. We haven't seen many of the expensive Crab guys yet. We've seen the throwaway Crab guys for the most part.
Your Scout and Shrewd Yusuke. That's all we've seen so far.
Who are both kind of cheap. And like this guy as well, you got to look at the surprise value of him. This is a conflict guy. So he can pop out.
I did not see that.
For one influence as well.
Yeah. He can pop out, and this guy can ram into you from nowhere. But this is the RKO out of nowhere of war cards. Like, bam, go, sack a guy, 5 strength, pop your province. Didn't see that one coming, did you? You know, that's kind of huge. And it means the Crab can potentially play a very... if they're rewarded for defending, play a defensive play style, go, yeah, come at me. I won't make my first challenge. I'll block your first 2 challenges. I'll stop you getting much out of them. And then, bam, military squish. And you're going to have to respect that speed of counterpunch with it. So Crab may be a deck that, like, we haven't really seen a really defensive deck yet. So maybe Crab are going to be the guys who are going to roll back with the punch and then counterpunch really hard. And he's a counterpunch card and a half.
And do you see Crab as being a clan that wants to go second because of that and just basically decline a first conflict, defend, and counterpunch?
I'd say they'll prefer to take the set to basically go second, but they won't be
not stuff keying off.
I'd say they wouldn't design them to be so limited as to be kind of crippled when they're going first. But they may have some way, like there might be some sort of, they might put a Crab card in there that lets you go, actually, you get to go first, I go second.
The opposite of Way of the Unicorn sort of thing.
Something like that. And probably get some other advantage because Way of the Unicorn lets you preserve a thing. So maybe the Crab one is like, actually, I'll go second and I'll get an additional fate or something else like that. We don't know, but I'd say they would benefit. But he's a real counterpunch card, and his out of nowhere value will have to be respected.
Yeah. I like
and it is notable that one of the cards we have seen for Crab so far is Reprieve, which is that 1-cost attachment that you can discard instead of discarding the character they're attached to. And the reason that's important with the Stoic Gunso is the Stoic Gunso loves sacrificing people with 0 fate that are tapped out. They've already, made their political attack. They're not being used anymore. And with Crab, you have the option of having more of those, because you don't need to initially decide until the very end of the turn which character you're going to drop that reprieve on and keep till the next turn. So you could have 2 or 3 characters that have 0 fate. You've had an attack with them earlier, or you've defended, and then you can choose which of those you're going to get rid of with your Stoic Gunso to get that extra 3 force, essentially doubling their contribution that turn, and then which of the characters you're going to drop a reprieve on and save till the next turn.
Yeah, looks great. And we've got this week we've got fiction coming out. Is there any, in terms of going out on limbs, anything you want to see from the Crab fiction coming out?
I'm looking forward to seeing the direction they take Hida Kisada, because Hida Kisada is a fairly polarizing figure. He's controversial in a way that a lot of the other clan champions aren't, because Kisada is explicitly a villain at the start of the Clan War saga in Original War, and so there are sympathetic interpretations of what Kisada was doing, but there are also harsher ones. So he's kind of a polarizing figure, and I'm interested to see, because the clan champions have been a significant focus in every one of the stories so far. What is their take on Kisada? And I think he's a fascinating character to write for. I think he's a fascinating character to tell stories about, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do with him. like they may do a more shades of grey interpretation of Kisada, or a slightly more difficult to read version of Kisada. So we shall see. Do we see his internal monologue, or is more like Yakuni, where he's a bit inscrutable and you're not sure exactly what he's doing, because he also has a face hidden behind armor. What's he thinking? What's his plan here? What's his play in this storyline?
So for people unfamiliar with the old setting, what made him polarizing or a bit of a villain?
Well,
Justin, do you want to jump in?
given I'm just going to interrupt, but given that we've seen the crab sacrifice mechanic, and given it's probably going to be Hida Kisada as the clan champion, I don't think it's going to be too long before we see Hida Sukune on a stick. And with that, I will hand it back to Eoin.
So, if you've read the early storyline, Kisada makes a deal with the Shadowlands to attempt to smash the Empire and take over as Emperor, which ultimately resolves in him stealing the ancestral sword of the Hantai from the Hantai 39, who's then revealed to be, of course, spoilers, Fulang. And he's always been he betrayed his oaths, and he went against the Empire, and he brought devastation and destruction, the taint through the Empire, and in violation of the crab's oaths to never let that happen. And so he's he's a straight up villain from that point of view. But from the crab's view, his thing at the time was that the Empire needed strong leadership, and he was the one who decided to provide it. And he's had a lot of interesting interpretations, because he's not I'm the crab, we defend the Empire, we never question our role within the Empire. He was a guy who did question, said, look, the other clans are not worthy of the protection we provide. I'm going to be in charge because I'm the strongest. And he's an interesting and dynamic character for that reason. A little bit of a villain, because anyone who upsets the status quo to a certain extent is a villain. So, he's a controversial figure. There was a 500 post Facebook thread on the L4 Facebook page about why do people like Hida Kisada.
So polarizing is a fair...
Yes, absolutely.
Well, to be honest, I'm going to disagree with Owen on that. Hida Kisada was a great villain and did a lot of really terrible things, but he never was a villain. It was always Hida Kisada, the Great Bear. Oh, he's doing it for the Empire. He's just going about other ways of doing it. It was always very much it's almost a might makes right. Like, Kisada was always seen as this big guy who realized that things had to be done, and sometimes it was some dark things that had to be done. But it wasn't like the Phoenix, where they went down this dark path and they got corrupted and they redeemed themselves. With Kisada, it always kind of felt like he just did what Kisada was doing. And anyone who wanted to argue with Kisada could argue with Kisada. And the argument didn't go that far. And the crab, despite everything, were always 120% behind Kisada, because Kisada was a great bear and is the personification of everything that the crab believed in, especially when he was doing all of the things the crab didn't believe in. And I can understand why there's such a long thread about it, because despite everything that the story guys did, despite every bad decision Kisada made, the fans still just loved them, and the crab who were, standing on the wall shouting abuse at the Shadowlands were totally okay with Kisada nailing his son to a cross for a war banner and leading Onis across the Empire to make a point. Especially because that point was, we need more support so we could stop the Onis from marching halfway across the Empire. So I'm not sure I would say that Kisada was controversial, or I think more he attempted to be controversial, but never was. It's almost a shame that he ends up, retiring and becoming...
Backhanded compliments from Baz a go-go.
a fortune of persistence. I mean, he did so many terrible things.
Oh, I think Baz might have frozen.
I admired Kisada, pretty much it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious. I mean, it's interesting the way you tell that story. It does sound like the sorts of stories that they've said they want to tell in the new setting of, focusing on that sort of conflict, that internal conflict, and people being pulled in ways that they might not traditionally be expected to go, and it's not just the hero stories. So hopefully, and Justin, do you think we'll see that same storyline resurrected, or do you think they'll go somewhere completely different with it?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I mean, certainly the way they've been going, they've been going in significantly different directions with every other clan so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go a different direction. I have a hard time imagining that they'll top the old Crab clan story, because Kisada was just a giant asshole. He was amazing. But I genuinely don't know. I mean, I'm not sure where we're going to get the same Yakamo redemption arc, but it's just, I don't know. I honestly don't. I mean, I of all the old clan stories, certainly the ones I identified with by far the most were the Crab and the Phoenix. Because for whatever reason, but those are the ones that I would be loath to see changed. The other clans, whatever, it's fine. But I don't know. But I really hope they keep the. It'd be hard to say ambiguity. It's not because, like, the Great Bear was not an ambiguous character in any scene by any stretch of the imagination. He was goal-oriented, direct, kind of like Hitomi actually, but with I think far more with far more specific ideas of his own personal glory,
and with better PR.
Absolutely. I mean, he had an entire clan behind him. So, but it's like the old story was great. If they can top it, I'll be gobsmacked. But here's hoping.
One of my favorite old Kisada stories. There's a lot of great Kisada stories. The CCG players would know, but there was actually a fantastic little encounter with Kisada you get in the RPG. There's a scenario or a source book called Bearers of Jade, which is kind of reimagines L5 War in some ways as Call of Cthulhu, and you're in fantasy Vietnam because you're on the wall. And the adventure that they wrote to go with that book was called Mirror Mirror. And they actually cut Mirror Mirror from the book because they said, you're not allowed to drive all the samurai mad or all the players mad. And they ran it as a convention scenario instead, and then it got published, and it's available online. One of the bits in the start is you're brought in as a bunch of samurai, you create your samurai, you go and you're playing, and you're all personages attending a wedding in Crablands, and something happens, and the problem needs to be solved, so you're all summoned to the presence of Hida Kisada. So you go into this smoky, darkened room where Kisada is sitting on his throne, and there's a bunch of braziers billowing smoke out all over the place. And he has you kneel down with your heads pressed to the mats in front of him. And as you look to the left and right, you see that the doors are not made of paper and wood. They're instead metal with a razor-sharp edge on them. And you notice that your necks are in line with those doors. There are big, muscly Hida standing on either edge of those doors. So if you annoy him, he's going to shut the door on you. And it is the best interview I think I've ever seen, where he's like, so are you going to say it and annoy him? And I was like, well, no, not now.
But you also can't, move, because that would be probably quite offensive.
Yeah. Oh, look, he's here, I'm conducting a meeting. What is the meeting? You're going to do what I say. If you listen very well, you're not going to get your head chopped off.
Good stuff. We'll see. Maybe that'll be the inspiration for the new fiction. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to. Do you want to talk about the tabletop simulator gameplay, or do you think we've sort of covered a lot of that in itself in the Dragon, talking just general Dragon stuff?
Well, I think it's worth saying that we're not the only crowd doing it, and that there are games that you can watch on Twitch and on YouTube if you look for them. And in the last few weeks, there's been a real upsurge of it. And there's an opportunity there to actually see the game in play and kind of learn lessons from it. Because I think I can say for all of us that there's a lot of cards that we looked at on paper and thought one thing, and then we got into a game, and they just performed much better or much worse than we were expecting. So I think this, more than many other games possibly, it is something you got to play and kind of work your way through and slowly understand. And those games are out there to watch, and it's a lot of good fun.
And also on top of that, not sort of, I think it's very tempting to play a game and make a bunch of judgments on the cards that on how they performed in one game, where you really need to play 10 games to sort of start to get an accurate feel for the cards, and more. Okay, so we're kind of coming to an hour mark anyway, barring sort of the slight stall. One thing I wanted to ask kind of Eoin and Justin, in terms of you guys going to Gen Con, we're obviously a bunch of other people are too. Have you guys kind of started thinking about how you're going to approach that tournament? Or is it just too early still to sort of be thinking that way about, what clan you might splash if you're going to play Crab and Phoenix respectively? And do you think there will be many deck building options in general, or given the learn to play rules, is it going to be pretty much quite straightforward? Maybe Eoin, have you thought that far ahead?
Yeah, I have been thinking about it. Barring, we've kind of unofficially. Well, no, we haven't unofficially. We saw a leaked version of the build deck rules, and if they were unmodified, I do not believe you had a massive amount of options when you build your deck. You would have some options, not a huge amount, but you would have some options. I've been planning out my trip because it requires a little bit of finesse, just in terms of getting in. Because the first thing to do is get in there early enough on Wednesday to grab your badge and your packet of tickets. Be there early on Thursday morning to be at the front of the queue. So when you get into the trade hall, you can go straight to the FFG booth and buy the box of Alpha War that you're allowed to buy. Then you're going to go to the Thursday tournament, which is going to be massive. It's going to be ridiculously huge. And to a certain extent, I'm very interested to see how they organize it, because it's going to be unwieldy. I would say that tournament is going to be a bit of crack, but I don't imagine it will be. We're going to play this until there's one undisputed person who's won.
Sure.
I don't think that's going to happen. Friday is going to be the tournament with, I'd say, where there will be a winner, because they're going to do the top 8 on the Saturday. So, I'm going to enjoy both of those. I'm definitely going Crab, probably splashing Lion for the Thursday tournament. I'll see how they work out. If, I don't know, if Crab, aren't doing terribly well, I'll still play them on Friday, but I'll groan about it a bit more. We'll see regardless. I might change which clan I splash, but at the moment I'm looking, I think Lion are who I'd splash, because Lion have the broadest, most applicable cards to the deck. And then, that's it. I mean, Gen Con is packed anyway. I've got other stuff I want to do as well, but the majority of my time will be Alpha War, certainly on Thursday and Friday.
Awesome. Justin, have you thought much about it?
No, actually, I am the exact opposite of Owen. I really haven't bet it at all. I know I'll be playing Phoenix for sure, regardless of how good or bad they are. As for which clan I'll splash, I really want to see what more clans have to offer. And I just to have a clue what Phoenix do. So once I know more, I'll make an informed guess, and go with that on the Thursday, and then based on my experiences on the Thursday, I will refine my ideas for the Friday and see how we go there. But really, no, I should be doing more, but I'm not.
Cool.
Not enough information yet, really. There's obviously the stuff like playing the tabletop games is great because it gives a feeling of how the game is. But in terms of how the game really is, with more cards in the environment, and I just, I have no idea. So I'm not going to go all out on, testing with the information we have when literally any card revealed on any given Wednesday could completely change, my perspective on what's good or not in the game. So as it gets closer to the time, I'll probably do some more.
And something I want to ask you guys, we've obviously been playing some casual games and it's all quite loose about, if someone makes a mistake, letting them take stuff back and things like that. How strict are you in a tournament environment about, with your opponent, and if they make an error, letting them take it back, or are you kind of what's done is done, and how do you approach that sort of question or scenario?
I'll start, because when I originally played Alphavor, I was all over that. Like, get friendly as possible, no need to cut decks, take that back, not a problem. I think that's a big mistake, and I think it's really disrespectful of the people you're playing against and yourself. I think you stick to the letter of the rules. I think you don't allow takebacks. I think you call the judge as soon as you have a problem. And I think this is an attitude that Alphavor players need to get down with. Now over to Justin, who totally disagrees.
I don't completely disagree. For me, as long as if somebody does something, well, as long if my opponent does something and no new information has been introduced into the game since they did whatever that thing was, if they declare an attack with, or declare a conflict with 3 guys, and then they go, oh no, wait, actually just 2, I have no problem. But as soon as a new piece of information enters the game, then basically all decisions prior to that are locked in, and there's no way out of them, because now you have, if you're going back to change a decision and you have additional information, that completely warps the game. So for me, as long as I'm with Baz on shuffling and cutting decks and stuff like that, I think that should just be the basic etiquette of how the game is conducted. Because then there can't be any questions or doubts. Then if you shuffle someone's deck and cut it, then there can't be any doubts. It's just you can it just puts your mind at rest. But for stuff in the game, as long as no new information is entered the game from when an action was taken, I will almost always allow my opponent to take something back. I wouldn't say always, because there could be some very specific situation where I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to, I don't want to issue kind of any universal statements which may require later qualification. But as a general rule, there's no new information is entered, then I'm okay with it. But as soon as any new information enters the game, then that's it. That decision is locked in, and there's no takebacks.
Owen, you've obviously approached it from a slightly different viewpoint, TOing a lot of stuff. When you're playing, what's your view on it?
The best way to play is never allow any takebacks at all. Both in practice, especially when you're practicing for a tournament, not necessarily when you're playing casually, when you're playing for fun. But if you're playing for a tournament, no takebacks. When you're practicing for a tournament, no takebacks, because you leave yourself open to people who would utilize gamesmanship to win games, and you never want to lose to people like that, because it leaves such terrible taste in your mouth. I've heard people do things like the following: early on in the game, do something minor wrong, ask their opponent for a take back. The opponent allows the take back, generates a permissive atmosphere, and then later on they'll make a mistake, ask to take it back, and the person goes, "No, man, it's a tournament game. What are you talking about?" And just purely to get your opponent to tilt, to get them upset, to get them put them off their game. And you do not want to be at home with someone like that. You're much better off for everybody playing within the strict rules of the game, and everyone goes there, treats the thing seriously. Like, you can have fun, absolutely have fun, but play within the rules of the game, and you don't leave yourself vulnerable to the kind of people who take advantage. And even with Alpha, which is by and large excellent community, there are a couple of people in there who you need to watch out for.
Yeah. Part of the reason that got me thinking about that was Asawa Chuckles on the Discord was telling some of the Hall of Fame cheating stories from Alpha Vor, which was quite interesting to be regaled of. including Dan Tibble's playmat of cards and things like that.
Well, yeah, I think maybe we need some sort of like chess rule where once you pick up the piece, you definitely are going to move it, and then you can do whatever you want with it until you let go of it. And once you let go of it, it's done, and it's done. And we'll probably have a couple of situations where we'll be able to do that. Like a player is going to pick up a ring, they're going to flip around a couple of times, they're going to presumably drop it onto a province, then they're going to work out who they're attacking. And I think with that, until they've declared all of their attackers and they've kind of had a moment to go, yeah, I'm happy with this. I certainly would be okay with them taking all that back and kind of go, no, hold on, we'll do a different province, different declaration. As Justin said, as long as nothing has changed, you're good. And I guess some people kind of think things through in a mechanical, tactile way than purely mental. But I do think El Favor has, in previous times, always felt that El Favor players are more honourable somehow, which was always a mistake. Or even at the worst extreme, I've heard of Scorpion players being accused of being cheats because they're Scorpion players, which is an absolutely ridiculous notion. And stuff like that, I think we need to kind of keep an eye out for and get better at playing serious tournament games in a serious manner and being respectful of ourselves and our opponents.
Cool. Here. Great. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up, actually. So, thanks, guys, for the time and the wisdom and opinions. And so we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We may try and get a tabletop simulator game in with some crab in about a week and a half. And yeah, that's probably the plan for the next couple of weeks. So thanks, guys. We'll leave it there. And talk to you soon. Thanks for the chat, which was quiet this week. I don't know why.
Take care, everybody. Well, I suppose we're off our usual schedule. So.
Exactly. Dumbfounded with our wisdom.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
See you now.